Are you interested in strategies to improve your clinical workflow? The book I've chosen for today claims to provide you with such. The 20 Principles of the Alexander Discipline. This is the first book in a trilogy of the well-known American orthodontist Richard Wick Alexander. It was published by Quintessence in 2008. You're probably familiar with so-called self-help literature, such as 7 Habits by Stephen Covey, which is, by the way, cited in this book every now and then. So this book is sort of a mix of that type of literature with a traditional orthodontic textbook. The author has divided all his clinical experience into 20 subcategories, or how he calls them, principles. Let's take a look at the principle number 7. Build treatment into bracket placement. This chapter tells you how to position brackets in accordance with the type of malocclusion or in some special situations. For example, how to position brackets on the first premolars if you have extracted the second ones. And when, as an example, we have an open bite case with a high bracket placement. The documentation of each case in this book is just great. Archwise sequence is listed, cephalometric analysis is presented. For many cases, dental casts are shown, not for this one though. And of course, a nice set of intraoral and facial photos. You can tell how experienced the author is in documentation by looking at this case, which has black and white photos in the beginning, and then we see the same patient after more than 30 years in retention. Among other principles in this book, there are such as use non-extraction treatment then possible, use extraction treatment then necessary, follow a logical archwise sequence, and so on. For me, principle number 16 was especially worthwhile. It's titled Use intraoral elastics to coordinate arches, and basically this is a chapter on different elastic patterns. It has beautifully illustrated schemes and an advice on finishing elastics, which I have implemented into my clinical practice. When I first read this book, I was in my 3rd year after graduation, and this period is sort of a milestone for every orthodontist. You've recently finished the first batch of your patients, and you're looking at results, and you don't quite like them, and you're looking at your documentation, and you don't quite like it either, and you're thinking, I need more structure in my work. So I may say that this book added a little bit of structure in what I do now. Of course, there were many other sources of information that contributed to it, but this book was particularly remarkable because of its clarity. As the author points out, his main goal in writing this book was to eliminate unnecessary complexity, and I think he reached this goal. One might complain that there are not too many references to research papers in this book, and that's correct, but this book is not supposed to be a book for academicians. This book is supposed to be a book for clinicians. It has written in a less formal language than other orthodontic textbooks. It has a specific author intonations. Reading it, you almost can imagine yourself sitting in a cozy environment in front of an experienced orthodontist who tells you about his successes and failures and how he finally molded his approach. Important thing to mention, all the cases presented in this book, there are 19 fully documented cases, are treated with Alexander brackets, which are 018 slot brackets, which apart from the upper incisors have wings for rotational control. I never used these brackets. To be honest, I use traditional MBT 022 brackets, but I don't have any trouble with this difference. Whatever brackets you use, essential biomechanics stays the same. So my point is, don't get confused about specific brackets used or the name discipline. Basically, Alexander Discipline is just a collection of common sense orthodontic principles that will fit to anyone regardless of the appliances he or she uses. I'd recommend this book to any newly graduates, especially for those who are about to start their own private practice. There are some tips on running your own practice in the end of this book, and you have to be in mind that this book was written from a perspective of a guy who is in private practice for more than 4 decades himself. I hope it was useful. My name is Alex, I'm an orthodontist based in Moscow. I'd be glad if you will subscribe to this channel. Let's spread good literature together.